it's what's inside that counts. Yeah, looks are one thing, but inside is what really makes a person, I guess, and that is going to be something interesting in this movie. But let's find out a little bit more here, starting with the IMDb plot. A group of friends gather for a pre-wedding party that descends into an existential nightmare when an estranged friend arrives with a mysterious game that awakens long hidden secrets, desires, and grudges. Okay. Um, Interestingly enough, and I guess I didn't realize it until right now, it lists this as dark comedy, comedy, mystery, sci-fi, and then thriller. So, yeah, before we get too far into this, I'll admit, I really wasn't sure what to make of this film or even why I decided to watch it. Maybe I don't remember exactly what. I guess I saw it mentioned by maybe some people reviewing it and so forth. Um, it does have a slight, I guess, horror moment to it, but it definitely has a sci-fi angle to it. Um, Comedy, I guess with the characters that are in it and the way some of them are portrayed, I guess that's what you get. Um, I don't know. I would say maybe dark comedy, yes. I don't know necessarily how funny the movie is. Definitely has some, I guess, interesting stuff at the early on. But as the further this goes on, I don't know how funny it is. And not to say that, in a bad way or something bad about the film, but just just I kind of as putting this on and reading that, I just found that kind of interesting and just I guess felt the need to kind of talk about that to kind of start. I guess with that kind of covered, should mention that this one is on Netflix. That's where I kind of found this one. Wow, lots of ratings on this one too. So apparently, lots of people have seen this film. So and it's definitely probably been as a higher rating than some of the previous reviews that I've recently done. Um, so yeah, so I guess off the bat, not horror, but definitely some angles of that in it, and I guess I'll get into that in a minute. But definitely sci-fi and mystery and that kind of stuff. Um, this movie, I guess, does have some twists and turns in it. Probably some twists and turns that I don't necessarily know that I can repeat and explain. So we'll leave that as that. I'll try to keep this as spoiler free as possible. I may go a little bit further just to kind of explain really what's going on here. But definitely will not tell you how this ends. And again, I'm not sure I can explain everything that happens. I'll try to keep it as basic as I can. Um, I guess, to say, to kind of start, it starts off, kind of in the usual kind of thing. We have a group of people here, mixed, some girls, some guys, some are just friends, some have relationships, some have had relationship with others in the past. Some may like others that they're not with, and that all that kind of mixed thing that we sometimes get in horror movies or not a horror whatever movies that we see. So you're gonna have that mixed bunch of characters here. There's a good group of them, and so forth. They're having their party, they're having their fun. We're getting kind of early on introduced to them, introduced to how they react with others and their relationship with others and so forth. So we're getting all that, character buildup and dynamics and so forth. And, sometimes that's not all too important, but I would say that might be a little bit more important in this movie. And I'll tell you why in a second. So, particularly in slasher movies, I don't particularly pay, great attention to that. The characters come and we get that, usual setup and you're like, okay, or at least for me, I know in some movies a lot of people get, caught up in, they want characters, they want, relationships and all that. I don't really care, especially if it's a typical slasher where most of them are going to die anyway. I don't really care. And, sometimes the acting's so bad that, I really double don't care. Just, when they die, they die and, let's move on. Hopefully it's a good death scene, lots of blood, and let's move on. I don't need to know, their life history. Um, Here again, like I said, it's a little bit more important. I'm not going to say that they're going to bore you and over death you with it, getting to know the characters early on. But you may want to pay attention a little bit more, than usual. Obviously, I really wasn't. I wasn't expecting this to be a slasher, but I would say, again, I don't usually hang on getting to know that unless there are, I guess, other types of movies that where maybe you pay attention to a little bit more of what's going on with the character and so forth. But, the way this one kind of set up, it just to me seemed like another one of those movies where, I'm really not interested in. I guess I get less interested when it's one of these scenes, when we open and it's a group of people getting together and, it's a party or they're on vacation or they go to the cabin. Bad stuff's going to happen. And it's usually more about a specific event or more about why the killer is annoyed by these people and why you're annoyed by these people. Can't wait for the killer to kill them. So we have all that going on until then it gets kind of interesting when we get to that moment where you have this guy come to the party and he kind of reaches that point where, hey, let's play a game. And we've seen plenty of horror movies now where they introduced, hey, let's play a game, and that doesn't typically end well. But this is kind of an interesting one, where it's more of a game slash, I guess, experiment, where I forget exactly what they do, but they're basically all sitting together, and X, Y, and Z happens. And it turns out that everybody's in a different body. Like, let's say, Bob and Jerry and Larry are in front of me. Bob is now in Jerry and Jerry is in Larry and that kind of thing, if that makes any sense. Or basically, if you're watching this, I'm in your body, you're in my body. But basically, everybody in the group is now someone different. Someone else is in someone else's body. And it's supposed to be a random thing. So, once that happens, then I guess, part of the game is kind of guessing who is in whose body. And I guess, you win certain points by if you guessed right. And then certain things happen if you guessed wrong. And, the game part of it, I guess, isn't so important. I guess that's just kind of the explanation to why things start off happening. So, like I said, when they kind of introduce the characters and whatever, it's kind of important to know who they are and whatever, because, once they flip, it becomes a little wild and a little crazy because, not only are they trying to figure out who's who, and not only did you just get an introduction to who's who and their relationship with each other, now, they're trying to figure out who is who and whose relationship or whatever. So, obviously, the first time it happens, everybody's kind of awestruck by, oh my God, I'm in such and such's body, and oh, this is what this person feels, or this is what this person thinks, and maybe you wanted to be, maybe you liked that person, and then maybe you were like, oh, this is pretty cool that I'm this person, and then maybe you're like, maybe you didn't like that person, all kinds of feelings and whatever going on there, as you guys can imagine with that kind of happening. So the first time around is that kind of thing. Then they're gonna play like another round of it, and then it becomes a little bit different. Then it becomes not only is, some people are kind of playing the game as, like let's kind of, again, guess who is who, but then, others are kind of take advantage of the moment. Maybe now that I'm in such and such's body, I'm going to screw around and maybe do something that they would have never done, or maybe do, go hit on another person, or go give a secret away, or that kind of thing. So I believe they didn't do. I believe they do it at least one more time, and then something really bad happens where two of them end up dying. So just imagine the chaos of two people being in bodies that they're not them, and they end up dying. So now you have two, I guess, insides of people that are in other people, but there are two bodies that are dead. So now, again, like I said, it's hard to kind of explain and make sense. So hopefully you guys are following along. But, just per se, you have two people who are basically now seeing their bodies dead, but they're in other people. So, yeah, that's not good. That's a bad thing here. Long and behold, then there's, do we call the cops? How do we explain that? No, we're not going to call the cops. What do we do with these bodies? How the two people who's seeing that their bodies are dead, how they're feeling about seeing their bodies dead, how they're feeling about who they're in, what do they do, next, can they simply transfer, obviously they're not going to be transferred into their bodies and then be dead, so they don't want to be dead, but they're in somebody else's body who wants their body back. So you can imagine kind of the chaos and the craziness that is now happening at this point. Again, as hard as that is to explain, then it's basically, the movie kind of just goes into more and more chaos. Everybody has, their motivations. Everybody wants to take maybe a different, some want to take advantage of the situation. Some don't. Some actually, like the bodies that they end up being in. Some people want to screw around with those bodies. Like I said, there's a lot to unpack with what's happening here. It does get a little bit confusing with, again, you get, a semi-quick introduction to these characters. So once they start flipping, it's and again, you guys know I say it all the time, I pay attention, but I don't, I'm not usually, into the movie. So even more so for me, who's kind of watching it but not like super into it, to kind of figure out who's in whose body, who has an issue with who wants to do this. They get into a point where a couple of people kind of form in one group who want to do one thing here, and others that kind of want to do this over here. And then, it's how those two groups are hitting heads. And then even the people amongst those groups, are they really being honest with what they want to do? And just, like I said, it just becomes very crazy and even a bit confusing. Obviously, if you want to get a pencil down and as you're going through the movie, keep track of it or whatever, I don't know. If you're very good at keeping up with the characters and who they are and what they're doing, whatever, that's fine. I would definitely say if you have not seen this movie and you're going to sit down and watch this movie and get the most of it, definitely make sure you're not like me where you're kind of, promoting horror and watching movies at the same time. You may want to, not be doing other stuff and focus on this one. If you're really intent on trying to keep track of, I don't, I made it through, without having to grasp to each and every character. I think, once the movie goes on and once we get towards the end, it's kind of to the point where only, there are only maybe two or three characters that are really at the end of the day that are truly important to what is really happening here. There's stuff in their past, and like I said, they have issues amongst each other. Some of those things are just kind of distractions and don't really have anything to do with the main concept of what is happening here. Because there's something else really happening here besides this chaos that's going to unfold as it goes on. And so there are other issues amongst people that might be just those small issues among people. And then there's a bigger thing that's going on here, which is slowly unpacked as it goes. So, while you, again, thinking that maybe this is a small issue, it might be an important issue with something that happens to do later on. And then, or maybe it's a small issue that has nothing to do with nothing. It's just a distraction. So that's the way to unpack it here. again, I think the what makes the movie really good is what ultimately happens, and the direction it goes, and the story that they actually um, ultimately unpack there. Again, like I said at the beginning, not terribly interested in all the characters, not terribly interested in even, once the chaos kind of happens, what's happening between some of the characters. I think because of the chaos and because of the switching, the movie may get your attention and may grab you there, because you're kind of forced to pay attention to who is who, and when they're kind of having conversations, what the issue are, or amongst them, and then kind of keeping track. And again, the movies kind of jump, from one person to another person to, these two people's conversations to their conversations and so forth. So, I can see maybe why some people like it, maybe because of the twist, maybe because, where it goes, but also because, it's really going to draw your attention. Like, again, for me, not going to say that I liked all these characters, cared about all these characters, and so forth, or care about what their issues were with some of them. Some of them is not all that important. They're going to draw a little bit of attention and the suspense. They're supposed to be friends, but there are some moments where, certain characters not going to be as friendly to others as maybe some of the others. But again, there's a big other thing that's happening, and I think that's really what makes the movie, and where it ends up, and the big twist of it all. So, again, not, like I said, two people are going to die, not huge on blood and guts. It's a fairly simple death, but then kind of spends the movie out of control. And even with what ultimately happened, I don't think that necessarily was meant to happen, but that just kind of added to the chaos of it. So definitely a lot more to unpack in this movie than I thought when I originally sat down to watch. Like I said, I really wasn't sure what I was going to be watching, what was going to happen. And even at times as I was watching, I'm like, do I really like this? Am I really enjoying this? Or so forth. But I think once it, and this is obviously late in the film, or much later in the film, once it becomes apparent to kind of what is happening, you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is, after all, maybe some BS and some of that other stuff, that you're like, oh, okay, I can appreciate, what they did. And obviously every time they do a change, then it just, it's almost like refreshing the movie within itself. So you need to do a little bit of catch up with, who's who. So I guess by the time you get to that final, catch, because, at the end of the day, the numbers aren't right because two people have died. So where it ultimately ends up is going to be an interesting thing. So with all that said and all that confusion, and maybe I've confused you, maybe you guys are like, I don't know what's inside his head, I don't know what he's talking about, what this movie is really about, or what is happening. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to give it 3.5 pools of blood. I think of, because of everything they did here, they could have gone in a much more simple direction and whatever, made it a more simple game, whatever. I liked what they did, liked where the storyline went, and so forth. Again, acting okay, some of the characters and whatever, again, I would say you maybe not get hung up on too many of them. At the end of the day, only a small few are going to be ultimately important. Having a larger group is just there to add to the confusion and add to the chaos of changing the bodies, and so changing the insides, I guess, as you should say it. So I definitely think that, if I said this is on Netflix, Netflix. If you have Netflix, definitely you want to devote your time. It is about an hour and 40 minutes or so, to a little bit of craziness and something you need to pay attention to. Again, it says comedy. I'm not going to say it's that hilarious or whatever. There might be some character moments there that you laugh at, but I wouldn't greatly say it. I say it's more of maybe a mystery, of course, attached with some sci-fi, and with a little bit of maybe suspense and so forth in it. And maybe you can catch, what is ultimately happening here. I don't think you'll catch it too early, but maybe you do. So again, 3.5 pools of blood for this one, and that is out of 5. So with that, horrorsquarereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all of my reviews written in video, certainly mostly video reviews. So you can definitely like, subscribe, and do everything else that everybody wants you to do here on YouTube. But if not, no worries, it is okay. I appreciate you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook, information down below as well. Feel free to reach out. If you weren't as confused as I was about this film, feel free to let me know. And definitely in the comment section, your thoughts on the outcome, the twist, and all the craziness of this film in itself. So with that, I guess I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.